A Year of Learning by Dr. Paul Koningsberg in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Ruvain ben Labush, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nisan Hara, Nisan ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg in memory of their dear friend, Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malka Mann in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. The many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi. Friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov. Friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef. Friends of Avi Gitler, Avrameya ben Shimon. Carol Scher, her children and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook. Week of Learning by Sam and Shifra Coleman, in memory of his mother, Sarah Rachel Bas Abraham. Also a week of learning by Lala and Siggy Bessler, in memory of her mother, Brendel Bas Yechiel. Today is the 20th. And so we have also a day of learning by Elaine and Harold Rinn, in memory of her grandfather, Yitzchak Yehuda ben Meir Tzvi. May the Shemas have an Aliyah, Krank Rafia, Velti Yashir, Shem Atliya, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good Gaben Shtiyah. Okay. All right. Okay, so I thought we would just go back slightly to the bottom of Ayin Aleph Amud Beis, about 2-3 lines up from the bottom, and start there. Okay, and that will help us move along. Okay, we're dealing with this discussion on this Braita and what how to understand and interpret the Braita. Okay, and one of the items we're going to see here, basically, is if you have the Shituf Mabuot and the Eruv Chatzerot, we've raised the point that is it possible that to say that the Shituf Mabuot, as I use the word, overrides the Eruv Chatzerot? Okay. So that's part of the underlying question. And we saw that there was also a view as to what could be used, what foodstuffs could be used. All of this, all based on the initial question, point of the Mishnah that tried to tell us that we had a situation where if there was an earlier partnership among individuals in that Chatzer, they did not need to do a Eruv Chatzerot. Okay? But that was a three-way machloket. Okay? That was the view of the rabbis, that if the product used to make the Eruv Chatzerot of the two people was the same, one did not need to make a new Eruv Chatzerot. If the product was different, okay, the example the Mishnah gave was wine and oil, then it was, I believe, Rabbi Shimon who said that no, you did need to make the Eruv Chatzerot. Okay, I'm sorry, regardless, you did not need the Eruv Chatzerot. Then there was a third individual, okay, Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai, who said yes, even if the product was the same thing, you still needed to make an Eruv Chatzerot. Okay? So that was what we saw. Now, as I said, we're going to come back. We're on starting Ayin Aleph Amud Beis, about, 3 lines from the bottom. Plige ba Rabbi Nechumi, the Rabbah, that there was an argument between Rabbi Nechumi and Rabbah on the way to explain this Braita. Okay? Right? And what did they say? Was the following. Chad amar bapat, the kuli amalo plige de bechada sagi. Okay? According to one, if one utilized bread, okay, everybody is in agreement, okay, that it was sufficient, okay, that shituf would be sufficient, and it would be override or would be carry for the Eruv Chatzerot as well. Ki pligi biyayin. Why? What they were only arguing about was the use of wine. Okay? And now we'll go over to Ayin Bet Amud Aleph, our Amud for today. V'chad amar biyayin, and the other said, no, it's wine. Dechuli amalo plige, that everyone was not arguing about. The ba'inan tarte, okay, that here, okay, that if you used wine, then you needed to have both a shituf mabuot and a eruv chatzerot. Okay, ki plige papat. Okay, but where they argued about was use of bread. Okay, that was the case. That the rabbis felt the use of bread would mean that, okay, shituf was acceptable. You did not need the eruv. Okay, whereas it was Rabbi Meir who held still needed both. So the Gemara picks up now and challenges it with a Braita. Okay, and the Braita is brought and says as follows: B'chachamim umrim, the sages say, O me'arvin, O mishtatfin. Okay, according to this Braita, one either needs the Eruv Chatzerot or Shituf Mabuot. Okay, my love, isn't it not the following? Don't they say, O me'arvin b'chatzer b'pat, O mishtatfin b'mabui b'yayin, that either one needs to make the Eruv Chatzerot using bread or the Shituf Mabuot using wine. Okay, and that's the implication. The Gemara, however, says and tells us the following. Amar Rav Gidl, says Rav Gidl Amar Rav, in the name of Rav, Hachi Ka'amar. This is what the rabbis really meant. O me'arvin b'chatzer b'pat, umutarin kan v'kan, that one can make an Eruv Chatzerot using bread, okay, and that will be sufficient both for the Chatzer and instead of a Shituf Mabuot, O mishtatfin b'mabui b'pat umutarin kan v'kan, or you use the bread for the Shituf Mabuot, okay, and that will be sufficient both for the Eruv Chatzerot and Shituf Mabuot carrying. Okay, so Gemara continues, however, to see what the conclusion of this discussion is. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Halacha Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Yehuda, in the name of Rav, says the law is actually like Rabbi Meir, which means that they clearly taught publicly that this was the way to carry it out. The Rav Huna Amar, says Rav Huna, Minhag Rabbi Meir. He says, no, the custom was like Rabbi Meir. In other words, that they did not rule publicly, but they basically implied that people followed this practice according to Rabbi Meir. And the third option, the Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Nahagu Ha'am Rabbi Meir, that the people followed the practice of Rabbi Meir, In other words, they did not, the rabbis allowed the people to do what they did without interfering, without objecting. So we see three different views on this, what was the final result. Okay. All right, our new Mishnah, okay, is going to get back to our topic of Eruv Chatzerot. Okay, and remember, we have long pointed out that the question, one of the questions is, does one really need to have residence in that Chatzer? We saw that in terms of basically the Gentile, for whom you had to at least rent or put stuff there, okay, in that space. We saw that in terms of an heir, okay? And now we see that in terms of the facility itself, okay? What makes up an area that we could say has inhabitants, okay? And therefore we say that they can join together or that they are a separate group. So our Mishnah starts off, Chamisha chavurot sheshavtu betraklin echad. You have 5 groups that are all gathered, spending their Shabbat time together in this large hall. Okay. Now we could call it a banquet hall. We could call it a waiting area. Okay. A entrance area, a foyer, things like that. Okay. But this is a large hall. Okay. And the question is going to be, is this considered to be one room? Okay. And they're all, therefore, all one group. Or if there are partitions in this room, do the partitions render them separate groups for which each will be required to have their own Eruv Chatzeros? Okay. Beit Shammai Omrim, Eruv L'kol Chavura V'Chavura. Beit Shammai says that there needs to be an Eruv Chatzeros for each group. Beit Hillel Omrim, Eruv Echad L'Kulan. And Beit Hillel, however, says that there can be one Eruv for all of them. Umodim, however, the Mishnah continues to tell us that Beit Hillel does acknowledge Bizman Shemiktzatan Shruyin Bechadarim, that if they are all, each of the groups are in, let's say, smaller rooms, O Ba'aliot, or they're in second floor of this second story of this large hall, right? Shehen srichin eruv lekol chavura v'chavura. That then they're required to have an eruv for each one of the groups. Okay, Gemara. Now, what is the Gemara going to clarify? The implication seems to be, what do we mean by the groups being divided? Okay, does the group have does the rooms or the area, the hall, have partitions? Okay, and how tall are the partitions? Amar Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, machloket b'misifas. Their argument deals with low partitions. Art Scroll wants to translate it makeshift dividers, which isn't bad. Koren translates it with reed dividers, but the implication here is like, basically think of what we use in shul as a mechitza, okay? That it really only goes from the floor, let's say, up to a certain height, okay? It certainly doesn't reach the ceiling, okay? Certainly not in the shul, but even if we were to say in the base medrash, okay, something like that, okay? Right? Aval b'mechitza asara, But if you have a mechitza, a partition, I'm going to say that's 10 tfachim high, all right? That high. Divrei hakol, eruv l'kol chavura v'chavura. Then in that case, we're saying that we need an eruv for each group. Okay? Ika da'amri. And there are those who phrase it in the following manner. Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said as follows. Af b'masipas machloket pligei ba. Rabbi Chia v'Rabbi Shimon b'Rebbe. Okay? That even in regards to a partition, a low partition, okay, there is a machloket, okay, between Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Shimon b'Rebbe, Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rabban Gamliel. Chad amar machloket b'mechitzot hamagiot l'tikra. Okay, one says the argument is in regards to partitions that reach up to the ceiling. Aval mechitzot she'ein magiot l'tikra. But partitions that don't reach the ceiling, divrei hakol, iruv echad lekulan, everybody is in agreement regarding such low partitions that one eruv is sufficient. V'chad amar machloket b'mechitzot she'en magiot l'tikra. Okay, and the other argues, okay, that the machloket, their argument, is in regards to partitions that don't reach the ceiling, aval mechitzot hamagiot l'tikra. But where you do have partitions reaching the ceiling, divrei hakol tzrichin eruv l'kol chavura v'chavura. And everybody is in agreement that in that situation, you would certainly need a eruv for each group. Okay? Now, over to Ayin Bet Amud Beis as we continue with a challenge raised by the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Meitive. Okay, we challenge those Amoraim from the following Braita. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Says Rabbi Yehuda Hasabar. Difference of opinion as to what this means, Hasabar. Normally, okay, both Art Scroll and Koren suggest, based on Rashi, that it means Rabbi Yehuda, the sharp one, the keen one, okay? But there's an interesting issue that Tosafot raised as to why one particular sage would be called by such a nickname, and perhaps there's a problem of girsa, of language here, okay? And they suggest that it's really supposed to be another word, which means he was the lace maker. Okay? Lo nechlaku Beit Shammai u Beit Hillel al mechitzot hamagiot letikra. According to him, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel's machloket was not regarding partitions that reach to the ceiling. Why? That shitrichin eruv l'kol chabura b'chabura, that those certainly do need an eruv for each group. They're like separate groups. Al ma nechlaku, what were they were arguing about? Al mechitzot she'ein magiot letikra. Okay, on partitions that don't reach to the ceiling. Shebait Shammai omrim, that according to Beit Shammai, eruv l'kol chavura v'chavura. Each group still requires its own eruv chatzeros. Ubeit Hillel omrim eruv echad lekulan. And Beit Hillel says there's one eruv sufficient for all of them. And the Gemara continues, okay, to show the difference between the Braita and the previous explanations of the Mishnah. Laman amar b'mechitzot hamagiot letikra. According to Beit Shammai, who said, if it's up to the ceiling, right? Machloket, that's the argument. Tiyufta, we have a proof text, okay? That the Braita then gives us a clear answer. Ulaman da'amar b'mechitzot she'ein megiot letikra. But according to the one who says that the machloket focuses on partitions that don't reach the ceiling, machloket siata, then at least the Braita here supports this issue of what the machloket is. Lahach lishna, okay, according to this language, the Amar Rav Nachman, it's said by Rav Nachman, right? The version that Rav Nachman gives, machloket b'mesipas tiyufta, that if we're talking about a makeshift or a partial divider, a low partition, the Braita is going to be a proof text against it. Lahach lishna, according to this language, the Amar Rav Nachman, af b'mesipas machloket. The language of Rav Nachman's explanation is that their machloket of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel even applies to a temporary, a low partition. Lema tehuve tiyufta. Should we say then that this is a proof text against it? Amar lach Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman, however, could argue back and say, plige b'mechitza v'hu adin b'mesipas. Their argument is clearly in regards to partitions, in other words, higher partitions, but it also logically is regards to lower partitions. V'hai dekam miflige b'mechitza, and the fact that they argue about taller partitions, lo di'acha kochan the Beit Hillel, is to show you the strength of Beit Hillel's perspective. V'liflige b'mesipas, and the fact that they argue also, says Rav Nachman, about low partitions or temporary dividers, lo di'acha kochan de Beit Shammai, to tell you the strength of the view of Beit Shammai. Gemara tells us, koach dehitira adif, that the strength of the more permissive view, okay, is to be preferred. Okay, if that's the case, all right, then what it tells us then that even if the machloket for Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel applies to both kinds of partitions, okay, nevertheless, we're going to apply the law according to Beit Hillel that a single eruv is sufficient. Okay, let's go on now. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav. Says Rav Nachman in the name of Rav, halacha k'Rabbi Yehuda Hasabar, that the law is like Rabbi Yehuda Hasabar, as he said, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, and then Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak further, matnitin nami daika. He argues that even the language of our Mishnah also, okay, can be deduced clearly that that's what it's saying. The katani, because it's teaching umodim bezman shemiktzatan shriyim bechadarim uba'aliyot, that Beit Hillel is willing to acknowledge the position of Beit Shammai, even if some of them, okay, some of the groups are in rooms, separate rooms, or a separate floor. Okay? Shetzrichin eruv l'kol chavura v'chavura. That then they do need a eruv for each and every group. Mai chadarim umai aliyot. So what do we mean then when we say rooms, or what do we mean when we say second floor, right? Upstairs, right? Ilema chadarim chadarim mamash, va'aliyot aliyot mamash. Pshita. If we saying that a room, when it says a room, it really means a room, or attic, second floor, it really means second floor, a separate area. That's obvious. Ela lav ke'en chadarim, ke'en aliyot. But we're talking about, it's as if it's like a room. It's as if it's like an attic. Okay? Umaynihu. So what are we then talking about in this case? Mechitzot hamagiot letikra shmamina. We're therefore talking about walls, partitions that reach all the way up to the ceiling. That's what that's what we determine from this. Okay. Now, as we continue um, with the Gemara, okay, it made me think just another way of identifying it is that we know that in certain businesses, certain okay, you have a large area, but people have cubicles, okay, and those have walls, but certainly those walls don't go all the way up to the ceiling, right? They're high enough, usually, at least for a person who's seated, to feel separate, but not always necessarily high enough for the person standing to feel separate. So I thought of that as another identifying way of defining the difference, okay, in terms of mesipas and mechitzot. Okay? All right, we're going to continue now. Tana, b'med dvarim amurim. We have a Braita that now teaches us what are we dealing with in terms of our Mishnah. Keshem molichin et eruvin lemakom acher. We're saying now that it's when these people in that group have to bring their eruv to another location. In other words, maybe they have to bring it in to another room, or they have to bring it into a more centralized location. All right? Aval im haya eruvan ba'etzlan. But if their eruv, okay, was along with them in their location, divrei hakol eruv echad lekulan. Everybody is in agreement then that they have a single eruv is going to be sufficient. Right? Now, keman azlaha, according to whom do we say that this Braita follows? The Tanya, as taught in a Braita, the following: Chamisha shegavu et eruvan. You have 5 individuals of the Chatzer that have collected their eruv. Ukeshemolichin et eruvan lemakom echad. And when they all place their eruv together in a single location, right? Eruv echad lekulan. It then becomes one eruv for all of them.
Right.
Keman, according to whom? Kebeit Hillel, according to the view of Beit Hillel.
She says one can do it.
The Ikeda right? And there are those who cite another version here. Bamed Varim Amurim. What are we talking about? Keshahaya eruv ba'etzlan. When we say that the eruv, so to speak, comes to them, okay? It's in their area, in their chatzer. Aval im hayu molichin et eruvan lemakom acher. If, however, the 5 people of that courtyard have to bring their eruv, let's say, to the neighboring courtyard, so that they can carry from one courtyard into the other, divrei hakol, tzrichin eruv lekol chavura v'chavura. Then everybody seems to be in agreement that each group, okay, each chatzer, so to speak, must have its own eruv. Kiman azlaha, according to whom is that? The Tanya, as is taught in the Braita, Chamisha shegavu et eruvan, 5 residents of the courtyard that gathered their eruv together. Keshem molichin et eruvan lemakom acher, when they transfer their eruv to another place. Eruv echad lekulan, keman, okay, their eruv is a single one. According to whom? Delo kechad. It's not according to anyone. Okay, right? It's neither like Beit Shammai nor Beit Hillel. Okay, pick up now another Mishnah.
Wow.
Okay, a new Mishnah. Okay, this Mishnah is, I think, particularly interesting. Okay, because one of the questions really that's underlying it is we said that, or we seem to imply that residence is a criteria. Okay, so how do we define residence in a certain room, or a residence in terms of one being in the courtyard? Okay, do we define it by where one sleeps, or do we define it by where one eats? Okay, and that's what the Mishnah is going to explore next. Okay, Matnitin, our Mishnah's teaching as follows: Ha'achim, you have brothers, shahayu ochlin al shulchan avihem, that they occasionally or frequently eat at their father's table. Now, that could mean one of two things. Either it means they all come together, let's say for dinner every night, okay, but they go back to sleep in their separate residences in the courtyard, okay, v'yeshenim bebatehem, and they sleep in their residences, even it's all off the same courtyard. Okay, so are we going to say in a moment what kind of eruv is needed here? The Mishnah tells us tzrichin eruv l'kol echad ve'echad. According to Tanakama here, okay, each one of those brothers needs to make their own eruv, which would seem to imply that place where one sleeps is the criteria. Lefichach im shakach echad mehem v'lo irev. Therefore, says Tanakama, if one of the brothers forgot for some reason to make his own eruv, what happens? Mevatel et reshuto. He must relinquish his rights to carrying in the chatzer, because otherwise it would prohibit the other brothers and the father. Matai, at what point? Bisman shemolechin eruvan b'makom acher. Okay, at the time when they must transport their eruv to another place. Aval im haya eruv ba'etzlan. But if, however, they had the eruv come to them in their chatzer, o she'ein imahen diorin b'chatzer, or that there are no other inhabitants in that courtyard, einan srichin la'arev. They do not need to make a new eruv. Why? Because the fact, this part of the Mishnah, the end, Seifa, seems to say, well, the fact that they eat by their fathers already semi-establishes them as a single household. So that might change what the Reisha of the Mishnah said. We thought to infer there that the sleeping was the ikar of the residence. Now, at the end of the Mishnah, it seems to imply that eating is the main factor for the residence. So what really is it? Gemara says now, Shma mina makom lina gorem. The Gemara wants to say, it would seem to imply that the place that they sleep, where they stay over, that is the main factor. Okay? Amar Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav in the name of Rav, b'mekable pras shanu. No, they taught this, says Rav Yehuda, in a situation where either the brothers ate regularly at their father's table, or Makabel Pras, or that they received a portion from their father, okay? And still could have eaten in their own homes and slept in their own homes. That's where they taught this. So again, that doesn't seem to clarify totally our key criteria. So the Gemara continues with a Braita. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Braita. Mi sheyesh lo beit sha'ar, achsadra, umirpeset, bechatzer chavero. This Braita tells us that if somebody has a gatehouse or a porch or a gallery, okay, or something like that in the courtyard of his neighbor, Harei ze ein oser alav. This doesn't, but he's not living in there. Okay, so therefore it doesn't make a prohibition for anybody else in that courtyard to carry. Okay? At Beit Teven, if he has a storehouse for straw, the at Beit Habakar, or he has, let's say, a barn there, okay? Beit Ha'etzim, or he has a wood shed there, the shed that he stores wood in. Excuse me. Ubeit Ha'otzrot, or some other kind of storage house there. Harei ze oser alav. This, however, will indicate that there is a prohibition for other people in that chatzer. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, says Rabbi Yehuda, Eino oser ele makom dira bilvad. Rabbi Yehuda argues and disagrees with the Braita by saying no, only where it's a habitation, okay, does it render others prohibited, okay, in that same chatzer. Now, we go on with the following incident. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda Ma'aseh ben Nafcha. I have an incident with a certain individual, Ben Nafcha, right? Shahayu lo chamesh chatzerot ba'usha. That he had, let's call it for the moment, 5 different courtyards. He had things in 5 different courtyards in the city of Usha. Uba ma'aseh lefnei chachamim, and this incident came before the sages. Va'amru eino oser ela beit dira bilvad, and they indicated that there is no prohibition for the other residents of the courtyards, okay, unless he actually inhabited one of them. Beit dira salkada'atach. So the Gemara asks, are you really thinking that it's got to be a residence only that restricts the others? Okay. Right. Ela ema makom dira. But rather, I might say it was a place where somebody could dwell. Okay. So that might mean, for example, that if it's a guard house, okay, and the guard eats there or sleeps there, maybe that will render prohibit. Okay. My makom dira. So let's get on. What do we mean by a place of residence? Rav Amar, says Rav, will go just a little bit. Makom pita. Rav says it's a place of bread. In other words, where the person eats his meals. Ushmuel Amar makom lina. And Shmuel says it's a place where the person sleeps. And that's where we're going to stop today, where we'll pick up tomorrow this Braita that is going to try to clarify, okay, whose view is correct. So we're still left here with that question. What determines whether it's eating or sleeping okay, that it's a place of residence. And the Braita is going to give us a number of examples of individuals, okay, who spend time, okay, in a certain, let's call it moment, facility, okay? And how do we clarify that? Okay, so we'll, as I say, stop there for today.
Yashiko, thank you very much. Have a great day,
Okay, everybody take care.
everyone.
Rabbi Green,
Yes,
just point of information. The Young Israel of Staten Island has 2 boxes of matzah in the Aron Kodesh for the Arab.
yeah,
Yeah,
2 boxes of matzah.
yeah.
Okay,
That's the pas lechem.
oh, very good, very good. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, we
Yeah.
have it here too. We have it too. The rabbi puts it in.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I don't know if he puts where he puts it now, but when I was governor, we used to put it in the Kodesh here.
oh, okay. I was never familiar with that. All right, good. All right, guys, take care.
Take care.